On. Be careful where you step. There are fragments of silicon everywhere.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, is the regular crew. And we have the full crew assembled this week. Yes. Petty Fan is kind of back.
Yep.
It's like, we'll just let him explain his current situation.
Alright, for those of you who've been keeping score, I've had my second knee operation last week. This one's more extensive than the recovery is more extensive than the first one. The first one I could have kinda got around with crutches, but with one crutch, but with this surgery, I cannot put any weight on my right leg for 12 weeks. So that's been fun.
So you can't move at all?
I can move, but I need help getting off the hide-a-bed to even go to the restroom, which sucks.
Good God.
Yeah.
So how's your actual leg or knee doing?
Hurts a lot.
Are you taking painkillers?
Yeah, and part of the pain is due to my cerebral palsy. I have muscle spasms in my legs, and that is not helping this at all.
I'd imagine not.
Yeah, the doctor prescribed me some muscle relaxers that kind of help, but not a whole lot.
What kind of muscle relaxers?
I forget the name offhand.
It's nothing like opioids, is it?
I don't think so. I would need to Google the name and check.
It's like the last thing we need is you developing a dependency.
Yeah. Well, they gave me hydrocodone for pain medicine, and I don't have a problem with being addicted to that, so...
Anyway, what is the state of your knee now? Are you going to need another surgery?
I don't know. I see the doctor on Monday and discuss how this is going, and we may not know for a while, possibly at least the 12 weeks, whether or not the surgery was successful. Because they actually had to implant cadaver bone and cartilage into my knee. So if that doesn't bond correctly, then I'm probably going to need to go in for a total knee replacement before the end of the year.
So what you're saying is you're a zombie now?
Part Frankenstein, yes.
He's a flesh golem.
And yeah, if this doesn't bond correctly, I'm going to become part bionic man, so that's going to be fun.
Reminds me of my sister-in-law, who has actually set a record number of knee surgeries in her home country.
Damn.
True story. Yeah,
and I guess to get this over with real quick, I've also been having pain in my left leg, but we're gonna wait and see, if when I'm done with when I'm able to use my right leg effectively, if that stops, I can start putting my weight evenly. And if it's just because, overuse, or if I screwed up again and I'm gonna need to have them do the left leg. That'll be fun.
You really need to see if you could run a long cat cable or something to somewhere so you could use your computer without having to move.
The problem is less getting the cable because I got a power line adapter to use my Steam Link. It's space. I have nowhere to put my computer.
Replace your bed with it. No, I'm kidding.
So now you guys are not getting out of serving as the technical backbone.
I'm not. It's not about the fact that it's hard. It's that we're not as good at it.
I understand that, but it's like Petty Fan's just, incapacitated for the next 3 months. There's
At
nothing
least, yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it. Like,
Yeah, believe me, I wish I could bring my computer down here.
Yeah. It's like, believe me, it's like, and if you guys don't show up, I'm the one who will have to host the show and, do the technical stuff, which is not something I look forward to. Because, it's like, it's kind of hard to do both.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's not a prospect I'm looking forward to. But, it could very well happen, especially like on the Friday programs.
Yeah, and as far as gaming stuff goes on my end, Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers came out, and I've just been playing that through my Steam Link, so that's at least been keeping me occupied.
And I'm guessing your Medicaid thing went well?
I had the hearing, but I don't know how it's going to end yet.
Ah.
It's very possible I could end up having to pay out of pocket for everything, all the medical stuff they've done since the end of May.
Concerning.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything else?
I think I'm good for right now.
Okay then. Twilight. Handy. All right. Well, Galix.
I was away last weekend at PortCon, and that went well. It's always kind of draining, but still fun. The last day they had a geek game show thingy. It was like a semi-animated version of the old Pass the Buck show, and I won a bunch of not like super great stuff, but stuff. So that was nice. It's also been hot here. I'm debating, since I have tomorrow off, and also either then or this weekend, maybe installing an air conditioner, because being hot is no fun.
Tell me about it. I had to do grocery shopping in the fucking heat today. That was not fun.
Yeah, well, I have to wear long pants. I have to wear long pants for work, and yesterday I forgot to bring shorts for after, and that was no fun. So today I made sure not to forget that. Video game wise, I've been playing a lot of Bloodstained, even on the Switch version, which frankly has been fine. And it looks like they just announced a date for the first Switch fix thing, which is supposed to be in a couple weeks, which is good. Because if they can make it perform better, it'll be an even better, pretty good version. The game itself is good, it's just the Switch version has some performance issues.
It's like, it's got more than performance issues. It looks fucking ugly. Like,
I'm willing to accept the fact that the graphics are less good. They are less good.
Yeah. Look, I've seen the comparison. It's noticeable.
Look, being ugly doesn't impact the play experience. 20-second loading screens between a couple of screens affects the play experience.
I'm aware of that as well. Anyway, anything else going on?
I've already played a good chunk of the Switch game that we're reviewing this week, and I think we have another one coming next week, so I'm probably going to try and start that fairly soon.
I think we have Switch reviews for the next 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, people give me Switch codes, you get the Switch codes.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, anything else?
Not particularly.
All right, it's my turn. Well, it's like I gotta say my week wasn't as adventure filled as everyone else's. I think the biggest thing that happened to me was my lamp broke. It's like it's one of those lamps that has the lights, the way you turn it on be a dangling cord. That snapped. I'm using a desk lamp until it's like I just ordered a new lamp. It's probably not as expensive. I don't know how much that old lamp was. It was a gift. It's just that thing was awkward. It had this big glass top. Quite frankly, it's like it was really awkward, and honestly, the weight was starting to crush it. So it was time to get a new one. Anyway, other than that, game-wise, I've been playing a lot of Door Kickers for review. Genuinely enjoying this one. A bit of a hint for the review itself, but let's see. And setting up things for the show. Just some long-term projects are finally coming home to roost. Now, not everything is quite in place, so I can't talk about, in specifics. But it's like if this goes through, it's going to be one of our biggest shows ever in terms of notoriety. Let's just put it that way. But more on that. Well, it's like, it's it's just a matter of there are like 3 teams working on this game, and they've got to find someone out of 3 teams.
And they got to pick a sacrificial offering.
And make sure everybody knows what they're allowed to talk about.
Right.
Yeah, that's a big one. Laughs awkwardly.
But it's like the point is, it's more the I'm courting with the PR people, and they've got to find someone to an actual representative. This is the kind of stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
That I deal with during the week. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes, like this particular project, I've been working on for about a year now. It's just been a matter of they've been interested. It's just been a matter of finding the proper timing. We found the proper timing. It's just now we got to find a person to fill the space. Anyway, that'll about do it for the news segment. So merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And this week we have Michael Hahn and William Phelps of Portrait Onion Games.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello. How are you both doing tonight?
Excellent.
Good.
Oh, that's good to hear. Right, so how we get started is we like to ask the people behind the game studio, whatnot, how they got interested in video games in both a personal and professional capacity.
You want to go first, Mike?
Sure. This can be pretty long, but I'll make it as quick as possible. Well, disregarding how everybody started on consoles as a kid, I started on PC in '98, playing a game called Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2 on the Microsoft Gaming Zone. And what happened is I became so good at the game, I created tournaments for the game, and Microsoft asked me to start. And then I signed up with Microsoft to host tournaments. And then from there, I created an awesome esports network. Then it was so big. Then I let that go, and I just stayed in the gaming industry. And then now I pivoted over just make games. And I met Will in about 2010 with his Rise network, and now I'm here with Quarter Onion Games working on marketing and some development for Emberlight.
Cool. I guess for me, it was just being a pretty big gamer when I was younger. Went through the U.S. Navy for a while, and then when I broke out of there, had interest in looking into Full Sail and just learning more of the inner workings of games. I guess having the love for playing a game and then going, I can probably do this better. I can probably do this better. Especially with Bethesda being a big focus for games that I play, and how there's always room for improvement with the modding side of things. So learning through Full Sail, getting the degree, kind of getting input from a lot of the folks in the industry. And from that point forward, I was involved with War for the Overworld when that was pushed through Kickstarter and early access. Got a lot of experience from that one, learned a lot of hard knocks. Did a few projects since then, and then with Emberlight right now being our main project, which has been a lot of fun to build.
That's good to hear. Right. And so how did you two meet?
It's a good question, Mike. When did we run into each other? It was during the Rise Network thing. We were building up here, but I don't remember exactly how we started talking to begin with.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we met first, but I know it was with Rise. Somehow through his Rise network, he needed a community manager, and then we started talking about how he's going to build this great new game browser, launch his games, which never happened. But it was awesome. When you're just starting out and you want to do something really big and over ambitious, and then you learn, well, maybe we should start smaller.
Only taken 9 years to get smaller to the point where we get something done. So hey, there we go.
Has Quarter Onion Games been around for a while?
Not necessarily. So basically, Mike and I were with somebody else for a studio called Caponata, working on a game called Imaginations that was looking to basically build a game that was a fusion of genres. So when you jumped into it, the thought process was, no matter what genre you enjoyed, there was some entry point into this game that you can jump into. And it was meant to kind of allow people to come into the game as a real-time strategy or a role-playing game and kind of experiment with the other features when most games are kind of locked into a certain genre. So we were building that for a while, and we got to a point where that one was, while not as big as previous projects, was still slightly out of reach without funding. And so the thought process was, let's pare this down a bit, turn the features into individual games. So you had Emberlight as the RPG kind of elements, and we have 2 other games which are in conceptual stages, and then just focus our time on individual games. Perfect building RPGs, perfect strategy games, perfect city sim, and then we kind of work our way back up to a combined game in the future if that's still in the cards.
And how did Emberlight get the green light over the other 2 games?
More of market, a little more easeability of getting into something like this. So right now, the 3 games are more like strategy and city sim. And while there's definitely markets for both of those, we just felt that the dungeon crawler one would be something, one is easier for us to build. It's one of the ones that we were most looking forward to getting involved with. So we've had the most fun putting this together and kind of feeling it out as time progressed. And a lot of this stuff derives off of this game in terms of how the 2 games function in the same timeline. So we thought, build this one first, kind of use this as a stepping stone A lot of the functionality for this one here, parts of it will just derive right into game 2, so it saves us time in development as well. But this one just was a good one to kind of get our feet wet again in development, reach the finish line, build it up, build something a lot of fun, and go from there.
So all 3 games are supposed to be in the same universe?
Yes, and the same time period. So what we're trying to get to with this entire setup here is offline multiplayer or asynchronous multiplayer. So instead of building the one super game that has them all interconnected if you wanted to play together, what we're getting to with this one is a system called Trinity, where if you prefer Ember Shard and a friend of yours prefers City Sim, you can both play the games, join a server, and the effects of the City Sim one will affect what is available for Emberlight. So you can play a single player game, get the single player experience. Nothing is dulling that feel. But your actions are having a bigger whole feel in the entire server itself.
That's certainly ambitious.
Yeah, it's been looking at so especially with kind of how the industry is going. There's a lot of push on live service, a lot of push on multiplayer, and there's a lot of people that just don't like that aspect of games. And what we were trying to look into originally was with cross-platform. We've seen situations where certain games have done leaderboards, and that has seemed to push through. And we're saying, well, what if we just had data like a leaderboard that was pushed through on a server, but that data would contain information about what was changed in a current session? And so it was kind of like just kind of looking at how can we make all 3 of these games work together and allow people to kind of, the same situation with the Fusion concept a while back, to move forward with that.
Mm-hmm. And focusing in on Emberlight in particular, what made you pick a dungeon crawler?
I love dungeon crawlers. Playing them since I was young, between Zelda and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. It's a great. I like the feel of those. Like one of my favorite games is Skyrim, and going through the dungeons in there, and specifically the fantasy elements of swords and sorcery. So we felt this kind of functionality would work the best, and also from a lore standpoint of where this sits within the entire spectrum of what's being built right now by our writer Bailey. It just fit the most where we are right now.
See, and well, Mike. So for those who might have missed our preview of Emberlight, what was it, last week? This is a pretty unique dungeon crawler in the sense that you don't really do any exploration. It's all, it's combat focused. And I'm wondering what was behind the decision to go in that direction.
Yeah, so I know for myself, I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy X. It's still my favorite Final Fantasy of the entire series. And when we were looking into the baseline of what was the core of Emberlight, we were looking into sort of a Final Fantasy X-esque kind of retro combat system where it's turn-based, sort of uses an initiative system for the order of turns, things like that. So something people that have played those games are kind of used to. But we wanted something of a twist. And I played a lot of Final Fantasy XI with the Blue Mage, and especially the Blue Mage through all their games. And it was always an interesting concept to me of empowering myself via the things that I was fighting, as opposed to your traditional, I have a spell book, or I just find equipment or whatever it was. And so we said, well, is it possible, especially with how much fun we have with roguelikes, can we combine these systems together and create something as the turn-based style of Final Fantasy X as a base, but the Blue Mage elements of how you specialize, so instead of loot, and then build it into a roguelike. And that was kind of the core we built off of, and then kind of everything kind of fell into place around that as we progressed.
Right, and to make sure we got this proper, this is a rogue like and not a rogue light.
So I've heard multiple responses on that one there, yes. But we're aiming for a roguelike.
Yeah. Well, it's like there is actually a difference. A roguelike is, like rogue. A roguelite is, that's the stuff that has permanent upgrades. It's like, and from what I've played of Emberlight, all of the upgrades, if you die, they go away. If you can call them upgrades. Indeed, I suppose we should talk about like the big theme of Emberlight, and that's corruption.
Yeah, so that goes into the whole concept of the learning the abilities. So the backstory behind everything with Emberlight is evil within the world. The Ember Order is basically the focal point for quests to clear out the evil, and they send their Ember Knights in to complete quests. Now, as time progressed, with the Ember Knights using these Ember powers, which is what you learn from enemies, it started corrupting the Ember Knights that were going and doing these quests. And at the end of each of their quests, they would kill each other off. And then the Ember Order would then have to now create a new party to go and hunt these Ember Knights down. And so there's more in terms of the lore, which Bailey's currently building out, where this is actually a direct response to events that happened before this. But in terms of like a simplistic view of the whole situation, that's kind of what happens per run. So build up your corruption based off how strong the abilities you add to each of the characters. And then once the final quest is complete and the boss is defeated, then you fight amongst the three. And the strongest one that survives gets added into a pool that you'll then have to try to defeat that character in a future run if you choose to do that kind of quest.
That's certainly a unique bent to a dungeon crawler. It's like, I'm not recalling any offhand that, it's like the ultimate goal is to become, well, it's like, I guess, Dungeon Keeper. But, even that was like, you're the supreme overlord, you got to stop the heroes. This is more, you are to become like the supreme overlord or something like that. And digging into the whole corruption thing, like, different monsters give you different abilities. How does that affect things?
So it depends on the tier of the abilities. So we're using sort of a looter shooter feel to the entire game. So when you highlight different abilities, they'll have a color code that sort of aligns to Diablo, Borderlands, things like that. The type of tier determines the amount of corruption that's going to be affected when you put that ability on that character. So boss abilities, abilities in later levels will give you a much higher spike for corruption each time you put them on that character itself.
Mm-hmm. And like is there a particular incentive to win?
Yeah. I would say, at least for the runs I've done, it's been sort of so you basically create your own challenge in this game here. And it's a sort of I complete a run. I create this uber powerful corrupted boss. And now my end goal, at least for me when I'm playing, is can I beat that boss now? That boss has all the abilities I left it at. It has all the traits it gained. So to me, a really, really difficult fight. Can I go and do a run, get my entire party powerful enough now to fight this character and beat it? So there's not necessarily a goal, since the runs themselves are self-contained we aim for like an hour per run. There is stuff you will unlock over time in terms of different run types, different rooms, different subclasses that continue the process forward. But the end goal is kind of what you make of it in terms of if you want to keep doing the runs themselves and try more difficult encounters, maybe different builds and tests to see how they react. But the long-term goal is, can you take down these corrupted bosses that you've created yourself?
Oh, I see. And how far along is the game in terms of development at this stage?
So we're just about to approach beta. The launch is August 13th, so there's not going to be too many changes from this point forward. A lot of it is communication. It's been the biggest feedback we received so far. More information provided, so when you come into the game, you're not like left wondering how to navigate or different features that are built in here. So mostly communication. Some tweaks. There's definitely a list of bugs we're still working through, but nothing really drastic from the current build that's on Steam right now, outside of just tweaks here and there, communication and bug fixes.
And what engine are you building it on?
This is built on Unity.
Standard, very standard. And given that it's Unity, are you building this game for Windows only, or are you also including Mac and Linux into the equation?
Goal will be Windows, Mac, and Linux at day one. And then we are looking into iOS, Android, and Switch as post-launch, depending on how everything kind of pans out.
Oh, have you been in contact with Nintendo?
Nothing yet. Just with the way that they do distribution, you typically got to work through a publisher to get onto their platform. So we're going to basically look at how the launch goes. Mobile, we can kind of handle ourselves through how Unity works for cross-platform.
Right.
And depending on how sales go and how the response is, we'll consider going to the Switch at that point.
I could see this game working well on the Switch. And have you locked in a price yet?
Yes, it'll be $14.99 as the base price.
Any discounts at launch?
Yes, it'll be, I believe, 15%. I think it comes out to like 12 something. I forget. It's within our client.
Right. And now I'll turn to my colleagues here to see if they have any questions of their own.
Not much. I think we've done a pretty good job of explaining it, at least.
All right, then.
I will say the gameplay looked rather interesting.
Yeah.
So the roguelike light thing is on the meta progression, of which this game doesn't have any, aside from that you're creating your boss for the next run when you play.
So it was tough, actually, because it's tough to purely define roguelike versus roguelite. So we were looking into a few marketing groups, and they were trying to see where it falls. And there is somewhat of a genre definition from a thing a few years back, in terms of it's got to be procedural generation of the maps each time, and it's got to be permadeath, and it's got to be turn-based in every facet. So we're turn-based in traveling, and we're turn-based in combat. It got vague in terms of, like, you don't really have shops in Rogue. You don't really have certain elements. So we've gotten conflicted responses back. Some folks say it's got to be ASCII to be Rogue. If it's any other graphics, it doesn't count. So
yeah, obviously not that.
Right. So half the camp right now is saying we're a roguelike. The other half is saying we're roguelike. I'll be whatever folks want the game to be. It's more of just getting the game to function the way we're trying to go after, and not really go for the label per se. But we have the elements of those. The only thing I would say that would kind of get away from it is that technically, when the characters die, they can die within the game here. Town portals do have a very heavy cost to resurrect them, so I guess that sort of counters permadeath. But beyond that, we're trying to hold to the rogue-like kind of functionality as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. So I like playing blue mages in Final Fantasy, but it does get a little bit weird when you try to sorry, I haven't had a chance to play this yet, so I don't have full awareness like Adam has yet. But, does every enemy have something that an ability you can get from them, or is it just some, or?
We don't want to go the route of Blue Mage specifically, where, say, an enemy in say, Final Fantasy XI has, 3 abilities, but only one you can learn. So every ability that enemies use, you can learn. There is no limitations in the system.
Okay.
The way the system works right now is every base enemy has 3 abilities. Mini bosses have 4. Bosses have 5. And we've made it so we've been kind of refining this over time, where the chance to learn the abilities isn't too unforgiving. So typically, after 2 or 3 shots of the same ability, you will learn those abilities in each combat.
Sounds neat. And nothing crazy like you have to have the ability to mind control the enemy to be able to learn abilities to heal yourself or whatever.
Nope, we actually tried that early in development, where there was sort of like an affinity where Blaze Knight was only physical, and it broke the game pretty badly at that point. So really the characters are an open slate. They don't really have any kind of requirement where magic has to be on the pyromancer. They do have initial starting stats that say damaging abilities will be better at the start on the pyromancer, the mage type, but you don't necessarily have to follow that, because especially with the way corruption works, Those traits will vastly change how the characters work, which could potentially turn your tank into a damage dealer that can't take damage at all. So it's a very fluid kind of game as you progress through the run.
Okay, that makes sense. Sounds interesting.
All right, then. Any other questions or comments?
None that I can think of.
All right. Well, it was lovely having both of you on the program. It's like I haven't had a chance to play too much of Emberlight since the preview, but it's like hopefully you have a good launch, and everything comes together properly, and we look forward to giving Emberlight a proper review when it comes out. Anyway, the game is Emberlight. It's currently on Steam. It will be coming out August 13th at the price of $14.99 for Mac, Windows, and Linux. I don't think there's a pre-order option at this point, but you can add it to your wish list. So be sure to do that today. Twilight, play us to the next segment. Welcome to the topic.
Adam, you faded out there.
Sorry. I hit the wrong button there. Yeah. Anyway, welcome to the topic of discussion. This week, I've been hinting about this for a while, but this week we are talking about Starbreeze. I suppose the first thing that comes to mind is, who or what is Starbreeze? And why are we talking about them? Well, to give you some background, Starbreeze is the developer of several highly acclaimed first-person shooters. You might know them for the Payday series, The Darkness, The Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay. They've done a lot of really good first-person shooters, and some really popular ones. And the reason why we're talking about Starbreeze is because they kind of collapsed some months ago. I'd say about half a year to 8 months ago. And it's not a story that a lot of people know because they are a Swedish company. And, a lot of the news was in Swedish.
Yeah, that'll do it.
It's like, but, they've gone from, an acclaimed developer and publisher. They tried to become a publisher. They've been branching out into other areas. They've been trying to get into the VR game. And not just developing or publishing VR games. They have been doing this, but the thing about it is they've also been trying to develop their own VR hardware and investing in VR arcades. Yeah, a lot. It's they've gone from a developer, with a laser-like focus to a company with a lot of fingers and a lot of pies. But that is not the whole story. It's also this is the second collapse of Starbreeze, and what I mean by that is Starbreeze almost died in 2013 because among the games they developed was the reboot of Syndicate for EA. I've forgotten that this thing existed. I don't blame you. It's like, it's a game that, it's one of those remakes that, why did you even attach the name to this? Because, it's like, granted, I never played the Syndicate series, but I'm like, Syndicate was a pair of strategy games from the 90s. This was a first-person shooter, so you're already starting off on the wrong foot. I'm like, and, indications, it's like all the reviews I've seen is this was a pretty middling shooter. Like, apparently development was really troubled. A lot of crunch. Crunch is not a new thing, people. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, a lot, it's like, a lot of burnout, a lot, it's like a lot of the, it's like this was a bad project. Not just because the game sucked, but because, it chewed out a lot of the staff. And, that's kind of where Starbreeze ceases to become Starbreeze as it's like the people that made the old FPSs, they went off and, well, first they developed a game called Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. You may have heard of this.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably, it's probably their most art house game, but it's like this was a project. This was a smaller project that just helped them to decompress. And after that, these people they went off to found a new studio called Machine Games. Machine Games, they're the developers of the current Wolfenstein games. So yeah, that's why that game series ended up, turning out so well, because there was quite a pedigree. Now, as far as the old Starbreeze, they hooked up with this other company called Overkill Software. They basically merged because both companies were kind of hurting, and they decided that if they combined their resources, they could, survive.
Surviving is good.
Yes. So, they joined together, and the game they developed and published after that was Payday 2, which saved their asses. And after that's when they got into the expansion. That's when they got into publishing. Starbreeze was set to publish a number of games, including Psychonauts 2. They were System Shock 3 and a strategy game called 10 Crowns. Not the first games that they were going to publish. They've already published some VR stuff. They published I'm trying to remember the game. Like, it's like, I forget what it. Dead by Daylight. There we go. You may have heard of this game. It's a fairly popular like survival horror multiplayer game. By the way, that game has also left the Starbreeze stable because developer Behavior Interactive purchased those rights, but that was before the crash. So what happened to Overkill / Starbreeze? Well, the answer can be summed up in 4 words. Overkill's The Walking Dead. Yes.
Not to be confused with the one you've heard of.
Yeah. Well, it's like, even when even when the Telltale series was alive, and Telltale was alive, the licensing agreement was weird because there was this game called The Walking Dead Survival Instinct, published by Activision. The thing of it is, that was done by via AMC. So it was based off the television show. Basically, what I'm getting at is, yeah, The Walking Dead had a non-exclusive licensing thing going on, and Overkill's The Walking Dead is basically The Walking Dead, but with payday concepts in it. And once again, this game was very, very troubled. You know, it's like, to say the least. It's like, okay, here's something that's very dangerous for your game. Switching engines.
Yeah, that generally implies like mostly starting over.
Right. I'm like when this game entered production, initially it was using an in-house engine called Valhalla. But then it moved over to Unreal. It's just none of their staff knew how to code in Unreal.
That sounds like something you'd check first.
Right. Like, it's like, it's like, the long and short of it is, Overkill's The Walking Dead got shat out onto Steam back in November. The game was pretty panned, and nobody noticed that this thing came out because, well, quite frankly, The Walking Dead train is maybe not dead, but we are a long ways away from its cultural zeitgeist. And yet that show still refuses to die. I'm like, but that's neither here nor there. I'm like, The Walking Dead has only sold about 100,000 units recorded, or at least that was like the initial. And guess what? They needed to sell a lot more than that to recoup investments, let alone make a profit. And so, this triggered, some emergency reconstructions at the Starbreeze.
I would imagine.
Yeah, it's like management has stepped down. In fact, like the former CEO got arrested for insider trading.
Well, that's a completely separate issue of don't do that.
Yeah, well, it's like the thing is he's been cleared. Like, apparently it was like a technicality thing. Yeah.
I always thought of that as more of a you either did insider trading or you didn't.
Well, it's like, according to the news, Anderson was later taken into custody, but was later released and cleared of any charges, as it was found that his bank, Carnegie Investment Bank, had pressed Anderson into selling the shares. So, that's not insider trading. At least according to Sweden. Keep in mind, we are talking about a different country here.
So, like insider trading, but not because of your own decision, but because your bank wanted you to?
It's like, maybe, I don't know. It's like, all I know is, like, he got arrested. That made headlines across the world because, when a fairly well-known developer's CEO gets arrested, it's going to get noticed, even in the English-speaking world.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like the follow-up. Nobody's really commented on. But it's like, so Starbreeze is basically a shell of its former self, as they've been trying to, like, they're not completely drowned, but they've been selling off shit in order to save themselves. They've sold off all of the stuff that they were going to publish. They owned a asset development house called Deruva Interactive, Indian. That's got sold off to Rockstar Games. Not sure how much this is helping, considering that it's like Starbreeze recently said that they don't have enough liquidity to last a year. So,
which is not a lot of time.
But they seem to still be alive currently. It's just, I don't know. I guess maybe they should be working on Payday 3 if they're going to get out of this hole.
Probably.
Seemed to work last time. And keep in mind, like, Payday 2 came out, 2013?
Not that should means anything, really, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it's been a while. Mm-hmm. And, it's like, I remember, like, a lot of monetization bullshit happened with that game. Mm-hmm. I had Payday 2, but I've never played it. So, anyway, that is the condensed story of Starbreeze. There's a lot of detail and nuance we're skipping because we've only got so much time to talk about this. There's a lot here. Like, it's like it'd probably make a decent Company Man video. Anyway, so that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. The week ahead, as mentioned before, we do have a Friday morning show. I think they're from the UK. Don't quote me on that. But coming up on Friday, July 5th, we'll be having Gabor Sutiores. Maybe they're Spanish. Polish, maybe? Like, I don't know. It's like, I'll look it up later. It's like they're from Europe.
Yeah.
It's like we get people from all over Europe. So, anyway, they are from Lost Pilgrim Studio. They are currently developing a game called Vargris. I think that's how that's pronounced. It's a pretty interesting RPG because the premise is you are the leader of a caravan. I'm like, and your mission is to guide your caravan, it's like via through the dangerous trade routes, and engage in the open marketplace. You do what a caravan do.
Capitalism, how?
I'm like, sure, why not? I'm like, keep in mind, caravans existed before modern capitalism.
I know.
It's like, it's also mercantilism. It's like going back to, all the way back to feudalism. In fact, caravans were one of those things that actually shattered feudalism. But we don't have time for a history lesson. The game is also very inspired by Darkest Dungeon. Hopefully, we'll be provided with footage. They still haven't done that yet. I'll give them a ping tomorrow. Hopefully, we get that before broadcast time. But gotta say, really interested in this game. Looking forward to presenting it. Coming up on the Sunday reviews, we have reviews for Door Kickers Action Squad, Warlock's Tower for the Nintendo Switch, and Mission Evil Guy. So until Friday, I wish you good gaming. I'll go take care of the